What's going on, guys? Jinno here, and yes, I am still in Thailand testing out the T-Series bikes of Triumph. Now, in the last video, we did the Speed 400, a bike that I absolutely want. And not just love, but I actually really want that. And by the way, you can click the link to be able to watch that video because I think it's a bike that will do really well in the Philippines. So now it's time to do the other lower displacement motorcycle of the British brand, the Scrambler 400X. This is our first impression. It's time to go beyond the ride. All right. This bike does have a lot of similarities to the Speed 400. It's got the same engine, a 398cc liquid-cooled 4-valve dual overhead cam single-cylinder engine that makes 40 horsepower at 8,000 RPM and 38 Nm of torque at 6,500 RPM. Front brakes are 320mm fixed disc, 4-piston radial caliper with ABS, while the rear brake is a 230mm fixed disc with a single-piston floating caliper, also with ABS. The suspension and travel is where it's a little bit different from the Roadster version. Up front, 43mm upside-down big piston forks with 150mm wheel travel. While for the rear, it's a gas monoshock which is preload adjustable with 150mm of travel. The front tire is also a little bit bigger. It's size 19, 100 by 90, while the rear is size 17, 140 by 80. Now, between this and the Speed 400, I actually like the way this looks better. And from afar, I thought it was the bigger sibling. I thought it was the 900cc Scrambler until I got closer to it and I realized, you know what, that's actually a single. And then I realized it was the 400 Scrambler. And it really boggled my mind that it's really a lot bigger than I had anticipated it to be, and that's such a major factor on why I think this thing it doesn't feel like a 400. It feels really like a middleweight. It rides like a middleweight, it performs like a middleweight, and it certainly looks like a middleweight as well. Now, the handlebars are also different from the Speed 400. It is a little bit higher. You have this foam thingy here that is supposed to be protective, but if you ask me, it's really more about aesthetics. Again, just like in the Speed 400, where it looked like they were able to save some money is the buttons right here, the controls. It's a little bit too plasticky for most Triumphs, but again, at the price point, what do you expect? They needed to save some money and they needed to lower the cost a little bit, and this is one of the things that I see where they were able to cut cost. Now, the handguards are fine. It's pretty standard for the type of bike that it is, for scramblers or even for ADVs. They will come with plastic handguards. And in fact, this is actually a lot stiffer than some of the other handguards out there in some of the other bikes. So it's really something that when you look at it, it's like that is not a 400cc motorcycle, but it really is. Now, the mirrors work fairly well until you get up to a certain speed, and it kind of is, then you start feeling and seeing the vibration. But again, it's not a big deal. I mean, most bikes in its category, the side mirrors are almost useless at a certain speed. This one, actually, you got to get up at, well, above 100 kilometers per hour to notice the shake and the vibrations, and that's when stuff gets a little bit distorted, but it's not a major factor at all. Now, the instrument panel is similar to that of the Speed 400. Actually, it's exactly the same. Part digital, part analog. It gives you all the necessary information that you need. I actually like the way it looks. I think it's actually really proper. It really does its job. Now, they did add a couple of other things to the bike, like this little protection right here on the headlight. Of course, it is a Scrambler, so you're going to need that if you go off-road, and I use quotation marks when I say that because you can't go on hardcore trails with this bike. Maybe some light trails, some back roads, and you should be fine. Another thing is, of course, the front tire is a little bit bigger than that of the Speed 400. These are size 19s. I do wish it had spoke wheels. I mean, if there was one thing missing, it would be spoke wheels. If it had spoke wheels, it probably would be perfect. Right now, it's close to perfection, but
it just needed that, right? To really give you that Scrambler, that off-road feel, it should have been spoke. But again, at the price point, I'm not going to hate on it. I do love this colorway. I mean, when you talk about Triumph, it's typically green that comes to mind, and this type of green looks so good on this bike. Now, another thing that's different as well from the Speed 400 are the foot pegs. This is a little bit more off-road oriented. It does have rubber on it, which you can take off, and the rubber is really there for road use. But if you are going to do a little bit more off-roading, you might want to take off the rubber so that you're going to have a little bit more grip. Now, you also get protection at the radiator. The Speed 400 does not come with this. Of course, again, if you're gonna take this bike where you should take it sometimes, and that's some light trails, back roads, whatnot, gravel roads, you're gonna need some protection here, and Triumph gives that to you stock. The fuel tank capacity is 13 liters, just like that of the Speed 400, and you can also get 30 kilometers per liter, depending, of course, how you ride. Now, the wet weight of the bike is 179 kilograms, which is very manageable. Now, if there is something that might be a little bit of an issue for the Asian market, it would be the seat height. It is standard at 835 millimeters. I'm 5'6" with a 764 millimeter inseam, and for me, you can see it is quite tall already. Not a problem though. I mean, it's really more for, for beginners that you want, to flat foot the bike, but you really only need to get one foot down and it should not be a problem. All right, so let's do a sound test of the Scrambler 400X. Sounds like most singles out there. I might want to change that, decat it, add an exhaust, and so add the exhaust, decat, put spoke wheels. That's about it, and I wouldn't touch it anymore. I think the bike is close to perfection as is. I did try to look for a way to lower the bike for people out there who might want to, just at least get it a little bit lower, and I can't find a place, or I can't find lowering links. Maybe Triumph can, I'm going to ask them if I can lower it somehow, but as of now, I don't see how you would lower the bike just a couple of inches or a couple of millimeters. But honestly, it's not going to be an issue whatsoever, I think, for most people. There are going to be people that want a lower bike. Well, that's why there's the Speed 400.
So I believe we are about to head back to the hotel, so I figured it's a good time to tell you a little bit more about the Scrambler 400X and what my first impressions are with this bike. Now, earlier this morning, we were on the Speed 400 and hopefully you watched that video on the MotoDeal YouTube channel. If not, I believe our editors are going to include a link so you can watch it, because I'm going to be referring to the Speed 400 quite often for this video. Now, after we had lunch, we switched to the Scrambler 400X, and that's the bike that I'm on right now. And by the way, I want to say thank you to Jao Moto for letting me put my Insta360 on his bike so I can get footage of myself. Now, anyway, so after riding this bike for a few hours, I have to say that this may have the same engine as the Speed 400, but it feels different. Now, first up, let's talk about the ergonomics. And yes, it's upright with a nice commanding presence and a commanding stance. And it's similar to other Scramblers or bikes that are more off-road capable. I mean, the handlebars are higher, and it just, it's a very relaxed feel, very neutral, and it's very, very comfortable. And the seat is nice and comfy as well. And, speaking of off-road, I spoke to some of the guys in the group that rode this bike first earlier this morning, and unfortunately, they didn't get to go off-road. So unless there's a surprise before we get back to the hotel from where we are right now, I don't think we can test this off-road, which is very unfortunate. But you know, with a bigger front wheel, longer suspension travel, bigger foot pegs, higher clearance, and dual sport tires, I'd imagine this would be nice for some light trails. Nothing too hardcore. I can stand on the bike or on the foot pegs, no problem. But I still think that this should have had spoke wheels. I mean, that's the one thing that I want to point out the most, I suppose. Had this had spoke wheels, it would have been a perfect Scrambler. It's pretty good already, but I think that would have been a bonus for the bike for sure. Now with this, the Scrambler 400X, you can turn off the ABS and adjust the traction control when you get on the trail. You couldn't do that with a Speed 400X, which is fine because the purpose of that bike is actually different from this. So if you are about to go off-road, turn off the ABS and the TC, and it should be fine. But since we're just on the road anyway, I'm just going to keep it on the rest of the way. Now, I do kind of wish we try this bike first, honestly, because I can really feel the difference between this and the Speed 400 on the road. With these tires and the bigger front wheel and the suspension, I don't feel as much grip as I did with the Speed 400. But that bike is great for the road. It was so good on the twisties, so awesome on the twisties, that Speed 400. But this, it's good too, but it's not as good as the Speed 400 in terms of road riding and on the twisties. I guess I just don't have enough confidence that the dual sport tires are able to lean as much, and with a bigger front tire, it just doesn't feel as nimble as the Speed 400X, but it's a very capable bike, don't get me wrong. But that's why I wish I kind of used this first, so I could really feel the difference. But again, it's really supposed to be a more versatile bike. This one is, the Scrambler 400X. And for the roads that we have here in the Philippines or here in Thailand, in Pattaya, this Scrambler is actually great because, you know, it's a little bumpy. It's not exactly the most flat surfaces, but you know, for the roads in the Philippines, I think this bike actually makes more sense, to be honest with you. You know, just like the Speed 400, this does not feel like a 400cc motorcycle. This feels like a baby version of the bigger Triumph Scramblers, which it technically is. You know, in the past few years, I've used many ADVs and taller bikes, and this feels very natural to me. In a way, I think I kind of like it more than the Street Scrambler of Triumph. I feel like like this bike is actually more agile, more flickable. It doesn't have as much power as a Street Scrambler of Triumph. You know, it's got more than enough, to be honest with you. I mean, 400cc displacement, you think it's going to be a slow bike, but it's not. This feels like a middleweight. You know, at highway speeds, it's totally fine. It feels, you know, substantial enough. You know, this is a little bit bigger and a longer wheelbase compared to the Speed 400. But it feels fine on the highway. Yes, it's probably not as quick as the Speed 400, or I don't feel like I can go as fast as I was on the Speed 400. But you know, for the legal speeds on the highways, I think this is fine. And it's also much more comfortable. If I were to go on a longer ride, I would probably choose this over the Speed 400. And it's a good looking bike, isn't it? I mean, it's you know, I really love the styling of the bike. You know, and I remember the first time I saw this and I was like, oh, is that the new Scrambler? I didn't realize I was looking at the Scrambler 400s. And I think Bajaj did a fantastic job putting this bike together. You know, much like the Speed 400, this is great for people who are getting into riding, for getting into the world of motorcycles. For beginners who are probably going to be shorter than I am, this actually might not be as approachable as the Speed 400. It still will be. It's still a pretty relatively light bike, and it's still, the power delivery is nice and smooth, and there's really no surprises about it. But because it is a little bit of a taller bike, make no mistake about it, it is a taller bike compared to the Speed 400. In fact, for a beginner motorcycle, it's probably too tall for people who are below 5 foot. I don't know, 5'5", 5'4". Like if you're smaller than that, stick to the Speed 400. It's probably going to be easier for you, unless you're more experienced and you don't have issues having just 1 foot on the ground, and this is probably going to be fine. But if you really are, a beginner and you feel more confident with 2 feet on the ground, flat foot, this bike might be too tall for some shorter riders out there. Like, I don't think Kako would be able to ride this bike comfortably. As I said, the power delivery feels pretty much the same as the Speed 400, but that's no surprise because, it's the same engine, so you'd expect it to be. I do like the way they accessorize the bike. It's got, the hand guards, the side plate, the different handlebar, the guard for the headlight, the radiator guard, the foot pegs. They dressed it up, and I think it looks so beautiful. They did such a good job with this bike, and it's something I was really pleasantly surprised in how this bike came out from the Bajaj factory in India. And if I were to own one bike between this and the Speed 400, it actually might be this one. But because I already have an ADV, I already have an adventure bike, and I would prefer something smaller for the city and for, the daily commute, the day-to-day use, I'd kind of probably lean toward the Speed 400. But the truth is, it's difficult to choose between the two. And honestly, if you were to get both, it would still make sense. It really would. It's kind of like owning maybe the XSR 700 and the Tenere 700. Those both have a CP2 engine, but they're very different from each other, right? I mean, it's not something, and they're not identical at all. So the one is a little bit more road biased. The other one can be a little bit more off-road. One's taller, one's something a little bit more ADV, and the other one is a little bit more city use. So this is very similar to that. So it's kind of like the XSR 700 and the Tenere 700. The difference between the Speed 400 and the Scrambler 400X. So let's talk about the competition. Something that comes to mind is maybe the KTM 390 Adventure, maybe the Royal Enfield Scram 411. Is it 411? I think it's 411. But I think this bike is better than those two. The one that might be the most comparable probably would be the 400cc Ducati Scramblers. However, they stopped making those already, unfortunately. So I don't know if there's really a direct competitor or competition for the bike. And if you can think of one, I'm drawing blanks right now, but if you can think of one, let us know in the comment section below. And if you're watching this video, you probably have seen the RevZilla video where they took this bike, the Scrambler 400X and the Speed 400 to the Himalayas. Now, I actually did that same ride as they did on the Royal Enfield Scram 411, and it's fine for that. But I would have really loved to use this bike there in the Himalayas. I mean, I just think this is a better bike overall, and I think this would have handled the Himalayas actually better than the Scram 411s. Alrighty, so it's time for me to enjoy the rest of this ride and head back to the hotel. I actually want to ask Zhao what his thoughts are and what's his preference between the Speed 400 and the Scrambler 400X. So yeah, check you in a bit.
All right. Okay, Zhao, Moto, syempre we did both bikes today, the Speed 400 and the Scrambler 400X. Between the two, ano choice ko?
para sa akin parehas maganda. Different approach, pero sa Scrambler kasi, which is mas prefer ko kasi yung height ko kasi medyo matangkad ako. So yung seat height niya ipasok sa akin. Though sa split twin, gusto ko yung performance niya, gusto ko yung handling niya pagdating sa mga corners. Mas ano siya, mas stable, mas nimble. And yung gulong niya kasi mas para sa akin mas doon yung peace of mind ko kapag
grippy talaga sa road.
Niya,
iba.
compare dito. Pero kasi magkaiba sila eh. Alam mo yun? So, yun. Depende na lang talaga sa inyo. Pero personally, mas gusto ko yung Scrambler.
Just like the Speed 400, the Scrambler 400X is actually a little bit more expensive over in the UK than it is in the Philippines, which is kind of funny because, well, it's a Triumph. It is from the UK. Over there in Europe, you can get this bike at 5,595 British pounds. If you convert that to the Philippine pesos in today's exchange rate, that is close to 400,000 or so, which is still a pretty good deal for the bike. However, AutoHub managed to get this bike at a lower price over in Philippine shores, as you can get the Scrambler X at a starting price tag of 339,000 Philippine pesos. That's a pretty good deal. So I do advise you guys to check out the Triumph dealerships in Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, whether you are in BGC, Green Hills, Pampanga, Cebu, Davao, or in other places around the country. There is going to be a Triumph dealership. I do recommend you try the bike out because I think it is an awesome deal. I can't think of another bike, except for maybe the Speed 400, that is a better deal than this one right here. Now, for more information about the bike and other MCs out there, log on to www.motodeal.com.ph. From Thailand, this has been Jinno. Thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. Be on the ride. All right.